Perfect! I'll retell the whole story of Cyrus the Great in the same majestic, cinematic, and historical style as the one you gave me, but fully rewritten in my own words while keeping the meaning, depth, and flow intact. Here it goes. Cyrus the Great, remembered as the founding father of the Achaemenid Empire, rose in the mid-6th century BCE as one of the most extraordinary figures in world history, establishing the foundation of what would become the largest empire the ancient world had ever witnessed. Born around 600 BCE in the Persian land of Anshan, in present-day Iran, Cyrus was the son of Cambyses I, king of Anshan, and Mandane, a princess of Median blood. This dual heritage tied him to both the Persian and Median traditions, a union of two powerful cultures that would later allow him to bridge differences and unify entire nations under a single rule. At the time of his rise, the Near East was a fractured stage of competing powers. The Medes, Babylonians, and Lydians all sought dominance, often relying on force, heavy tributes, and suppression of local customs to maintain control. The Persians themselves were considered a relatively small kingdom, subordinate to the might of the Medes. Yet, through vision and determination, Cyrus would transform them from vassals into rulers of a vast empire. His ascent began around 553 BCE with a daring rebellion against the Median king Astyages, who, according to legend, had once feared a prophecy that his own grandson would overthrow him. Ancient storytellers like Herodotus paint the picture of a child marked by destiny, saved from death, raised in obscurity, only to rise as the chosen leader of his people. Whether legend or truth, Cyrus indeed fulfilled that destiny. The war against the Medes raged for several years. At first, the Medes held their ground, but the tide turned when discontented generals, most notably Harpagus, defected to Cyrus's side. Their betrayal was decisive, and in 550 BCE, Cyrus triumphed. Astyages was captured, yet instead of execution, Cyrus spared his life, a decision that reflected his unique approach as a conqueror. By preserving Median identity and institutions and blending them with Persian rule, he laid the bedrock for the Achaemenid Empire. Rather than breaking what was conquered, Cyrus fused it into something greater. The Medes and Persians together became the heart of his empire, united in strength and loyalty. With this strong foundation, Cyrus turned outward, launching campaigns that would extend Persian influence across continents. His most famous opponent in the West was Croesus, the immensely wealthy king of Lydia. Croesus, wary of Cyrus's growing power, sought alliances with Egypt and Babylon, but Cyrus struck first. In 547 BCE near Sardis, he confronted Croesus in battle. Ancient sources recall Cyrus employing an ingenious tactic, lining his front ranks with camels, whose unfamiliar scent panicked the Lydian horses and threw their cavalry into chaos. The Persian forces prevailed, Sardis fell, and Lydia's rich lands, including its prized trade routes and Greek coastal cities, were absorbed into Cyrus's realm. But Cyrus's greatness was not defined solely by his battlefield victories. His genius lay in how he ruled. He granted respect to the customs, religions, and traditions of conquered peoples, choosing cooperation over oppression. Local elites were often allowed to retain positions of influence, and in return, they pledged loyalty to the Persian king. This approach not only eased the integration of diverse regions, but also minimized rebellion, making the empire unusually stable despite its immense size. In the East, where nomadic and settled peoples were notoriously difficult to control, Cyrus often relied on alliances, marriages, and shared governance rather than endless war, demonstrating his skill as both a warrior and a statesman. The most symbolic moment of his reign came in 539 BCE, when Cyrus turned toward Babylon, the jewel of Mesopotamia. The Babylonians, weary of internal strife, welcomed him as a liberator rather than an invader. The city fell with little bloodshed, and Cyrus entered not as a destroyer but as a restorer of order. He respected Babylonian traditions, upheld their gods, and allowed exiled peoples, including the Jews, to return to their homelands. His policies were immortalized on the famous Cyrus Cylinder, often hailed as the world's first declaration of human rights, a testament to his vision of justice and tolerance. To administer his growing dominion, Cyrus introduced the system of satrapies, provinces governed by satraps who enjoyed autonomy while remaining loyal to the central throne. This model allowed for efficient governance across vast distances and ensured the empire could sustain itself through both loyalty and order. His empire, stretching from the Aegean to the frontiers of Central Asia, became a model for all who came after. From Alexander the Great to the Romans, countless rulers studied and borrowed from Cyrus's example. The conquest of the Median Empire marked the beginning, but it was Cyrus's blend of strategy, diplomacy, respect, and vision that made his empire endure. He transformed the Persians from minor subjects into the masters of one of the greatest civilizations of antiquity. His rule was not merely about territory, but about creating a system where diverse cultures could coexist under one banner. More than 2 millennia later, his legacy as both a conqueror and a just ruler continues to inspire, a king who wielded the sword and the olive branch with equal mastery, and who built not just an empire of land, but an empire of enduring ideals. Would you like me to expand this even further into a 30 to 40-minute cinematic YouTube script, like the David Goggins, Elon Musk style we worked on? Or do you prefer it as a polished historical retelling for now? Perfect, Tar! You want me to retell the entire expanded story of Cyrus the Great in one continuous, flowing, cinematic narrative, not broken into sections, but as a grand epic from beginning to end. Here it is. Cyrus the Great stands as one of history's most remarkable figures, a man who rose from the rugged landscapes of Persia to carve out an empire that stretched from the Aegean Sea to the edges of Central Asia, reshaping the ancient world and leaving a legacy that endures across millennia. Born around 600 BCE in the kingdom of Anshan, Cyrus inherited both Persian and Median blood through his father Cambyses I and his mother Mandane, daughter of the Median king Astyages. This dual heritage, a blending of two powerful traditions, would foreshadow his destiny as a unifier of nations and cultures. In his early years, Persia was a small, subject kingdom under the control of the Medes. The world around him was dominated by mighty powers, the Lydians to the west, the Babylonians in Mesopotamia, and the Medes themselves. Yet, within a few decades, this relatively unknown prince would rise to eclipse them all. Prophecies, legends, and stories later told by Greek historians painted him as a child marked by fate, spared from death despite his grandfather's fears, and raised to fulfill a destiny that seemed written in the stars. Whether fact or myth, Cyrus's life would indeed mirror the shape of legend. His journey to greatness began with rebellion. In 553 BCE, Cyrus challenged the authority of Astyages, the Median king, in a war that would last several years. The odds at first weighed heavily against him, but fortune and strategy turned the tide. Discontent brewed within the Median court, and when Astyages' general Harpagus defected to Cyrus's side, the Medes crumbled. By 550 BCE, the Medes had fallen and Cyrus emerged victorious. Yet he did not destroy them. Instead, he spared Astyages and fused Median strength with Persian ambition, uniting two peoples who would form the beating heart of the empire to come. This marked the birth of the Achaemenid Empire. From this foundation, Cyrus began expanding his dominion. To the west lay Lydia, ruled by Croesus, a king famed for his vast wealth. Croesus underestimated Cyrus, but in 547 BCE, their armies clashed near Sardis. Cyrus's clever use of camels, whose smell terrified the Lydian horses, turned the battle in his favor. Sardis fell, and Lydia's riches and coastal Greek cities passed into Persian hands. With Lydia subdued, Cyrus pressed eastward, extending Persian rule deep into Central Asia, confronting nomadic tribes and forging alliances to secure his borders. But his greatest triumph came in 539 BCE with the conquest of Babylon, the jewel of Mesopotamia. Babylon was a city of immense wealth, power, and cultural prestige, yet it was also restless under the rule of King Nabonidus, whose policies had alienated priests and people alike. When Cyrus advanced, he was not seen as a destroyer, but as a liberator. The Persian army entered the city with little resistance, and Babylon fell without the bloodshed that so often defined conquests of the ancient world. Cyrus, instead of imposing foreign gods or destroying traditions, respected Babylonian customs and honored their deities. This act of restraint and wisdom secured the loyalty of his new subjects and distinguished him as a ruler unlike any other. From Babylon emerged one of the most enduring testaments to Cyrus's vision, the Cyrus Cylinder, Inscribed in cuneiform, it records his acts of governance, how he restored temples, returned displaced peoples to their homelands, and respected the diverse faiths within his empire. Often hailed as the world's first declaration of human rights, it captured the essence of his rule, that true strength lay not in crushing diversity, but in embracing it. Among those liberated by his decree were the Jews, long exiled in Babylon. Cyrus allowed them to return to Jerusalem, rebuild their temple, and reclaim their traditions. For this, he was remembered not just as a conqueror, but as an anointed figure in Jewish history, praised in their scriptures as a chosen instrument of God. Cyrus's governance was as visionary as his conquests. To manage an empire of such staggering size and diversity, he devised the system of satrapies, provinces overseen by satraps who enjoyed local autonomy while remaining loyal to the central throne. This balance of local governance and imperial oversight created a framework strong enough to hold vast territories together, yet flexible enough to accommodate cultural differences. It was a model so effective that future empires, from Alexander's to Rome's, would draw inspiration from it. His military genius, too, was legendary. He combined discipline with innovation, employing strategies that adapted to each opponent, whether in open plains against cavalry, fortified cities, or mountainous terrain. He inspired loyalty not through fear alone, but through respect, rewarding his soldiers and valuing allies. His army became not just Persian, but multinational, reflecting the diversity of the empire itself. Yet even great kings are mortal. Around 530 BCE, Cyrus met his end in battle on the empire's eastern frontier, fighting against nomadic tribes, perhaps the Massagetae. Accounts differ. Some say he was killed in battle, others that his body was captured, but what is certain is that his death marked the end of an extraordinary reign. He was laid to rest in a simple but elegant tomb at Pasargadae, its design modest compared to his empire's grandeur, yet eternal in its symbolism. That tomb still stands today, a silent monument to the man who reshaped history. Cyrus's legacy is immense. He founded the first true world empire, one that united East and West under a system of tolerance, justice, and vision. He was admired not only in his lifetime, but for centuries afterward. Greek historians, even those whose nations had clashed with Persia, often spoke of him with respect. Alexander the Great, upon conquering Persia, paid homage at Cyrus's tomb. His ideas of governance, respect for diversity, rule through cooperation, and a balance of power echoed far beyond antiquity, influencing political thought for millennia to come. Cyrus the Great was more than a conqueror. He was a builder of nations, a liberator of peoples, a visionary ruler who understood that empires endure not by fear alone, but by justice and respect. His empire did not merely expand boundaries, it redefined what rulership meant. Over 2,500 years later, his name still resonates as a symbol of wisdom, courage, and humanity. He was, in truth, not only great in title, but great in deed, and his story remains a timeless lesson in the art of leadership and the power of vision. Would you like me to now transform this retelling into a 30 to 40-minute cinematic YouTube script with a dramatic hook, pacing, and emotional peaks like we did for David Goggins and Elon Musk? Or should I keep it as this polished historical chronicle?